So is the home report valuation actually the value of your home? I'm Brian from Be Listed, and I've been working in the industry for around 6 or 7 years. I hate saying that phrase, but it is what it is. That's where I am. And this is Stuart. I used to work with Stuart at a previous agency. We're now both part of the Keller Williams family. Stuart is a recruiter. If you're interested in becoming an estate agent, he's the man to speak to. Stuart's got 30 years experience. Doesn't look it, but you know what, he has. So I'm going to ask Stuart this question. Is the home report value the value of the house?
I think the simple answer, Brian, is yes and no. So categorically, the whole purpose of the home report is to allow somebody to get a mortgage to be able to purchase that property. And there is a simple value on the home report. So yes, it gives you a value and there's a pound sign figure. However, there are factors that determine it might sell for more or less than the home report. More often than not, it's more. And again, various things come into play in terms of the number of people who've looked at the property, the level of interest, the willingness of a buyer who's wanting to pay more. There's lots of different factors that come into play. But yes, it does give a definitive valuation, but that doesn't mean to say that that's going to sell for that price. We're in a very strong market. We cover areas where very high in demand, and that normally means that properties sell for A, over the asking price, and B, over the home report price, and sometimes a lot more. It varies.
Perfect. So the key phrase I took for that is it's more of a mortgage valuation.
Correct.
It's for the banks to say, we will lend on this.
Correct.
And you'll be right, I'll be right in saying that there's a part of the home report that actually says, is this property mortgageable? And that's a key consideration as well, because there are some properties where they don't get a mortgageable, and then we have to go to cash buyers, which can make it more difficult to sell. So another question for you then is, you kind of touched on it there, why do some properties go way above home report?
I think mainly it's down to demand. It simply is a case of demand versus supply. And we all know that there's areas that are hugely popular for a number of reasons, be it schooling, be it just a popular place, it's family friendly, it's whatever. Demand can be very strong, and that can end up creating competition, and competition can drive the eventual sale price up. Which is frustrating if you're at the lower end of the scale and you maybe don't have the finances to offer a lot more than someone else. But there's lots of things that come into play.
Your kind of first time buyers, your separations are outbid by people that are upsizing and maybe get a bit of capital, and people that are downsizing in particular that have usually got a lot of capital, or somebody that's just got a big bank of mum and dad.
Yeah, all these things are true, Brian, and I think the examples. First time buyers. I think sometimes most people are quite astute now, and I genuinely am a big fan of the home report process. I'm not going to sit and say it's absolutely perfect. There are some downsides to it, but again, having been in the business for a period of time, I remember the days before home reports, and it was very different. And I'm glad the home reports come into fruition. I'm glad that there's a structure there, and it's very buyer friendly in the main. But at the end of the day, you're still relying on one surveyor to say the right thing. But with first time buyers, if they're offering more than the home report price, they've got to have the money saved up to be able to put it down. Sometimes some people don't realise that, and that can cause an issue. So there's a level of learning and awareness and trying to educate people around the home report.
So coming back to your earlier point about that home report valuation being mostly for banks, that's a key point, that's what the bank will lend on. If you want to offer more on the property, you have to dig into your property.
Yes.
Another key thing to pick up there is that if you offer less than the home report and you get that deal, the bank are only going to lend on the smaller number. So again, it's a key learning factor for anybody that's in the game, but something that you probably see, and I still see definitely every day.
But overall, I am a big fan of the home report process. I do think, if you compare to the olden days, I think it's a pretty robust system. It's not perfect, but overall, I think it works quite effectively.
Olden days and England and Wales, because they still work to the system where the buyer gets the valuation done after the deal. So, third question for you. love to hear a story or some background experience from you. Can a home report value hurt the sale?
It's a tricky one to answer. Can it damage a sale? It'll damage a sale if it's not at the level that perhaps the owner thinks they're going to get. And we have a tough job because as estate agents, we've got to go out and sit down, discuss with a client who's thinking and selling. We're the one that's got to use the market evidence and provide an assessment of valuation, a market appraisal, what we think the property will sell for in the open market based on all the evidence that we have presented. The surveyor largely has our information to go on by the time they get out there. So, we are starting pretty much from cold. And there are cases where, you could go and see somebody, and let's use the example of £200,000 for argument's sake. A customer might be thinking, well, actually, I'm hoping to maybe get around, 210, 220 for my house. That will allow me to buy the house I want to move to. And we are maybe hoping that the surveyor is going to come in around maybe, 200, 210, something like that. And it normally sort of ties in reasonably close based on all the evidence that we all use. We're not surveyors, so sometimes, the surveyor might find something wrong with the property. They could flag dampness, to use that as an example. The valuation might come back at 180. And all of a sudden, that then hurts the sale. And damages the sale. So I think sometimes there's a perception. I think the simple answer to your question is yes, a home report sometimes can hurt a sale, although I would probably say it happens less of the time. There's always maybe a negative situation that will come up and we're presented with, but I think as industry professionals, we have a good relationship with the owner, we have a good relationship with a lot of the surveyors. So again, sometimes it's having the ability to be able to present a solution to the client.
Yeah. So it can hurt the sale, but usually when it's something that we can't see and the surveyor sees.
Yes.
The one thing that caught me out, and I kind of touched on it earlier, was non-standard construction can be non-mortgageable. And there's been a couple of houses that were sort of partially converted to hide the fact that there was non-standard construction, and I missed that. But that was way back in the day, and it's something that's, once you build that experience, it actually becomes harder to miss. You see it right away. Yeah,
I mean, again, having worked in Renfrewshire for a number of years, there's a particular part of Paisley where, again, you've got that non-standard construction. There's a few streets where it's Kelath construction, and it's basically non-standard. So ultimately, it means for a buyer, there's maybe a more limited choice of lenders who lend on it. You can still get a mortgage on that particular property, but you might not have the same pool to choose from. But again, it should be presented as factual in the home report so that a buyer is aware of the situation, that it is non-standard construction.
And it helps to put it in the advert as well, because it stops you doing viewings with people that just absolutely need a mortgage and they can't get it. So fourth question, should sellers do work to the house before they get the survey done?
It depends. I think it depends on what work is required. I think if it comes down, certainly the advice I give to most people is it's a case of really thinking more about the presentation of a property. Structural things, or maybe something that's flagged up in the home report, if it comes up as a 3, where there's obviously a red flag and there's a pointer to say, look, that needs further investigation and that needs fixing. That's, I would say, a slightly separate issue. And the owner's presented with a choice of saying, right, well, I can get a quote on this, I can maybe get it repaired and then relook at it. I think in the main, the advice that I give to my clients and have done over the years has been more around decluttering, presentation, clean, neat, tidy, curb appeal externally. These to me are the really important parts of selling. It depends what comes up in the home report.
Yeah, I totally agree there. I tend to have the same view. I try to do the photography and the survey on the same day and just have a nice pristine show home for everybody coming through, causing all that hassle on the same day, as I call it. I will ask the sellers if there's things like damp or roof problems, and that's part of the appraisal. The point in the appraisal is to go around and have that discussion before the seller actually spends a whole pile of money that might not be worth it. So it's well worth having, and most estate agents offer a free, no obligation appraisal. That's why we offer them, so that we can get out ahead of the surveyor and just get you the right advice at the right time. Now, sometimes I've told people to go and do a certain amount of work and then come back to me if they can. A lot of the times we're just trying to make what we've got work. to maximise the value for your property.
Yeah, no, I think also, I mean, I've had a lot of people over the years say, in terms of, do I go ahead and change my kitchen and do this and do that? My normal answer is no, because you're not really going to gain from that. I literally have seen somebody spend thousands of pounds putting in a new kitchen, and the first thing the buyer does is literally get a skip, rip out the kitchen. There's a brand new kitchen, the skip, and they put their own kitchen in. So it's very much down to personal taste. But again, I think the whole point of the home report is to look at the structure to make sure that for mortgage purposes, the property is mortgageable and it's of a good construction, and it's a safe buy for somebody. Yeah. And that applies even to a cash buyer. A cash buyer isn't looking maybe at the home report in terms of the mortgage value, but they need to know that structurally it's a sound purchase for them. So again, it still has merit, even if it's maybe somebody buying as a cash buyer.
Yeah, and it's not just, it's the structural element, the weather tightness, but it also gives your sort of cash buyer, your investor, a view on what they actually need to spend it to get to the point where it is what they need, either to rent or to resale. So it does give us a good baseline. Final question for you. What actually determines the final sale price?
Again, I think it comes back to the point we made at the beginning. It's very much down to demand and supply, and the willingness of somebody who really wants that particular property. And you and I could sit down here and have countless tales of offers over bids, and people just, it gets to the point where you think, really, is that, you're shocked. You still get shocked by some of the prices people are willing to pay, and that's really what you want to offer for it. There's always people that will chance their arm as well, so it works both ways.
I've had a couple this month where
our job is to obtain the best selling price for our customer.
Yep.
That's what we are paid to do, and everything that I do is around helping my client to sell at the best price, and that involves marketing and all the things that we're going to do. But ultimately, it comes back simply to demand, as we've said. And if somebody's willing to pay more, sometimes it's through circumstances that can happen. We can't prevent that happening, and it's the owner that's going to agree on the sale price at the end of the day, and they decide yes or no to whatever the offer is.
Ultimately, that answers that question. What actually determines the final sale price? The seller and the buyer agreeing on a number. And
we can take 10 offers to somebody. Ultimately, it's not our place to say you have to take that one or that one. I think, again, looking at all the evidence around each of the offers, what their situation is, it allows our client to make an informed decision on an offer. And the home report is one of the things that allows the offer to be made, but ultimately it's the owner who decides yes or no.
Gives us that baseline. If they need a mortgage, it gives them, the buyer, what amount they can borrow against, and allows us to circle the square. So it can be quite a complicated thing. That's why we're here to sit and go through all of the information and give you advice, but you ultimately have to, as the seller, decide what offer you're taking. In that case, we'll wrap it up. So if you're interested in getting into estate agency in any role, Stuart's the man to speak to, because he's connected with many estate agencies in Scotland, part of the Keller Williams family. If you're interested in buying, letting, selling, investing, especially in the Ayrshire area, come and speak to me, Brian at Be Listed. Stuart and I are hoping to do quite a few of these videos, so if you've got any questions in particular you want us to discuss, please let us know. Thank you for watching, guys.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you.